Much for being with us here at Morning at NTV. We're going to be looking at our Kickstarter accentuating a centenary of FUFA. Yes, Chris and myself were here earlier saying, what, FUFA? Really? FIFA? FUFA? You know, so it was confusing because I think many of us think that FUFA was of Jojuzi here, Bazukulu situation, but unfortunately it is in the Jaja category. So the Centennial achievements of the Federation. I am Priscilla Regina Nalwaga. I'm so excited about this conversation. You had better wherever it is that you're catching us from this morning on YouTube as well as Facebook, and those of you that are choosing the traditional way of television. Now, Uganda Football Association, now FUFA, was formally constituted in 1924. Yes, you've heard it right. In 1924, when a few sportsmen and keen footballers then did meet to discuss the propagation of the game in Uganda. Now, when it comes to football, which had been then introduced in the country at the close of the previous century by the missionaries, was mainly played between missions. Now, in 1962, you do have a league that was inaugurated, and it made it possible for games to expand, and for the first time, you do have government departments and commercial houses coming to affiliate themselves with then the Uganda Federation Football Association at that time. Now, the history of football in Uganda dates back to 1800s. Yes, in 1897, when the British, this was led by Mr. Pilkington, a famous Cambridge athlete, proposed to teach the Baganda then at that time football at Namirembe. It was a very interesting experience, I can imagine, and not without complications, of course. And in 1926, a trophy known as the Gosage Challenge Cup was introduced as an annual event for the East African territories. You do remember them: Kenya, Tanganyika, Zanzibar, as well as ourselves, Uganda. And so since then, Uganda's football has transitioned through different ranks here and there, making its formal existence last for now 100 years in 2024. Now, after the formation of FUFA in 1924, it was affiliated to CAF in 1959, and then to FIFA a year later in 1960, and then in 1973 FUFA went ahead and got affiliation with CECAFA. Furthermore, also affiliated to the Uganda Olympic Committee. Now we're going to be having a walk down a memory lane, looking at the successes, the formation, the existence, and what have been the opportunities that have come through the formation of this body, and what's been its impact on Ugandan sport for 100 years, the impact on regional sport for 100 years, on continental sport for 100 years, and of course on international sport for 100 years. Privileged to be having this conversation with ex-co member and chairperson of the FUFA at 100 committee, and that is Mr. Rogers Viamukawa. You're most welcome.
Thank you, Priscilla, and thank you for having me here this morning.
It's a pleasure. And may I say first, kudos to the association. 100 years. That's a milestone. That's mind-blowing. I think for us in Uganda, we've been relating 100 years to the education system, majorly the traditional schools, the Budo, Gayazas, Nabiyangos. But to know that you're also in the Jaja League now, kudos to you. Congratulations. As yourself, how do you feel about this milestone and you being at the pivotal point of it?
I think it is a great moment, not just for FUFA and the people at FUFA, but for the country as well. But most importantly, I think a huge congratulations to our forefathers that had the vision and the wisdom to start this out. I wonder if they were alive today, how proud they would be of what the institution has become. Right. But at that moment, I think for them to think and create an institution that, you know, galvanizes all the football entities at the time, I think it was great visionary. You'll notice, and thank you for the wonderful research you've done. It's quite elaborate for anybody that is following on TV. It is true that the game of football was here in late 1880s, primarily brought by the missionaries. and it stayed on, I mean, for almost 40, 50 years, until the first semblance of a football association was established in 1924. But suffice to say, by no choice of intent, it is believed that the first football ground is actually where the current FUFA house sits.
Really? Oh, Namirembe. Okay, it makes sense.
But I must say,
it is believed.
I must say, it's not by design. It's just that when FUFA, then led by the late Dennis Obua, and may his soul rest in peace, when they were looking for land after being told by FIFA that would fund that time it was called Gold Project. They were looking for land, and the available land on lease from Namirembe Cathedral was where FUFA sits. And legend has it, it is actually where the first football game was played.
Wow.
So by no means of planning, it just happened. And again, something else that people don't know is that the first FA president of this country, of this great institution, was actually Sekabaka Daudi Chwa.
Okay.
So the game, first of all, it's not a coincidence that Uganda is called Uganda. You will notice Uganda has a lot many, should I call them nationalities, but the biggest letters that make Uganda are from Buganda.
Buganda, yeah. And
if you look at our football as well, whereas it has, penetrated the hinterlands of the country, but primarily, even in our league structure, primarily, there is still a lot of football played here in Buganda. And I think being the first place where football was played, being the first place where the first president of the FA was from, and as you know, the institution of Buganda Cultural Institution is very strong, both in culture, and sport is also culture in a way. But as an institution, I think has made great milestones from then to where we are now. When you were doing the preamble, you talked about the international affiliations, how they've come around, the competitions that the federation and the affiliations have allowed us to participate in. And if you look at it today, you would say a lot of Ugandans that are earning from the game abroad is primarily because there is a football association. So those affiliations have allowed us to partake on the global opportunities available within football for our youngsters before, now, and even the times ahead. And it is the responsibility of the federation to continue nurturing that global belonging, together nurturing our football talent at home, so that they can become, great players that are enjoying opportunities within the global sphere.
Okay. Let's talk about the instrumental other milestones. Now, those were indirectly related to football. Now, directly related to football, in the span of 100 years, what have been those significant milestones? The one that there is speak of is 1978, but I know that there's been more before and after that have been very pivotal as far as the federation is concerned.
I think, like you put, let's start from the very first 1924. When the country decided, the footballers at the time decided to have a semblance of an organization that can manage and nurture the growth of the game in the country. That was a huge milestone on whose foundation we still thrive today. Then you'll notice that was 1924, and there was a lot of football, like you talked about, cultural schools and so on and so forth. In 1950, 52, I believe, 52 or 57. Now, first of all, it is believed, and the first recorded football game on the African continent was played in 1882. So from 1882, and that was, I think, in South Africa. Now, from 1882, football was spreading eventually in Egypt and eventually into the hinterland. So there was football being played. Now, Uganda federated in 1924. Now, until that time, there was a lot of football on the African continent, but there was no recognized competition. So people were just playing, you know, self-organized kick-about football. Now, in 1952, you can imagine that recent, 52 or 57, I'm not very sure. 4 countries led by Sudan, they decided to form what is today called Confederation of African Football. It was basically Sudan, Ethiopia, Egypt, and South Africa. And they started playing. Here in Uganda, like you rightly put it, the first league game was played in 1962, around about independence when there was agitation for independence. So there was every aspect of social life was now starting to rot. And I think we were among the second cohort of countries that joined the Confederation of African Football. And then in 1976, I think as Uganda, we played our first AFCON. Went on and qualified again in 1978, which is one of the most pivotal achievement of Uganda, when we reached the AFCON against Ghana and we lost 2-0. And from that time, we continued playing. It has been a lot of, you know, football that was played from 1978 that people talk about, that great historians talk about, but not much success on the African continent. Of course, in between, there was a time when we lifted, I think in the 90s, when we lifted the Islamic Arab League, Uganda beating Iraq with that famous Sassoule goal. But at that time, football was amateur really, you know, for recreation. People playing around to be fit and everything. We started seeing professionalism where people are starting to look at the game in terms of earnings. I think late 60s or early 70s, when organizations, mostly government departments, were having teams. One as a recreation for the employees, but also they would seek out good talent and offer them jobs in organizations. Simba, the army side was one of those. Airlines, Posta, Bell, Diary, Nightingale, and so on and so forth. And football at that time was mostly on institutions and mostly government institutions. So, and this was even there before as interdepartmental or something, but now after the league was formed, there was this craze by government institutions having teams that are playing. And that is how our league structure started. Right. Today we have community clubs. We have clubs owned by individuals, and I think some of whom have real estate for very long. Clubs like Express, which is heavily associated to the Kingdom of Buganda. Clubs like Villa, which broke off from Express. And now there are even newer clubs. Clubs continue being formed. Players continue to seek excellence in professional leagues. And for us at FUFA, one of our objectives is to try and create a professional league structure that allows players to be able to earn off their natural talent. But by doing so, we continue to aspire to create a good national team that can represent this country, that can sell this country. And I think that is one of the major milestones, because today sport is one of the biggest avenues that countries are using to sell their tourism potential, their good standing in international community. And at FUFA, we're not left out. We continue to play that leading role in building the nation by portraying this country in good light, and growing its international standing using football. Okay. Till recently, as you're aware, we have been awarded the rights to host AFCON 2027. Apart from bringing the game to our fans back here, there is a whole lot of thinking behind it to use the competition to propel the progress that this country has made over the years. And without football, without this FA that was created in 1924, we would be unable to have that huge milestone. In fact, as I speak now, there are dignitaries that are coming into the country, led by an executive member from CAF, who is originally from Cameroon, to come and look at our facilities. How ready are we to host the CHAN in February, March next year? So all these would not be possible without this great institution that started in 1924, has been growing very steadily to the extent that it's being recognized by peers on the African continent, to give it the opportunity to host some of the premier competitions that the AFCON is doing. And it's such a huge moment, I think, for all Ugandans, that 100 years is here with us. Okay.
All right. Now, between 1924 and 2024, I know that most of the structures that we had then, we really picked up from what the colonial system was at the time. And many as in reflection to the politics, that what the colonial master had left as systems and structures was very functional and effective to making sure that people from all regions were catered to. And I believe that was the same in terms of structuring and systems for football. And so it begs the question that over the time, many people have seen it as eradication of the footballing structure, one that used to have regional competition, but now that really just being resuscitated by a lot of maybe push from individuals and EXCO members and privatization, and of course the private sector coming into support. And so it begs the question, what have those structure changes looked like over the course of the 100 years, and how have they affected football in Uganda, both positively and negatively?
Actually, to your surprise, when the colonial masters left, or until up to the time we had independence, there wasn't much in terms of football structure in this country. Like, the first league season was in 1962, I believe, after the colonial masters had given us the independence. And today, for instance, our football is structured in 8 regional football associations. And then below the regional football associations, there are what we call the district football associations that amalgamate and converge into the regional football association. And then we have about, I think, another 12 what we call special interest groups, coaches, women, schools, referees, youth, and so on and so forth. the Regional Football Association is a recent one, probably maybe about 10 years. But I also know in the 60s and the 70s, there was a competition called Interprovince. One time I went to see the chief road of Acholi at Kerakola Choli when we were trying to introduce the FUFA drum, and he took me into a history that I did not know. He told me his father used to take him along when these interprovinces were being played, and eventually, like the collapse of the state, as it were, in the late 60s and 70s because of war and instability, football was not being played, so some of those competitions died. And what we've done as a federation now is to go back. What was it that was being done then, and what is it that we can do in modern times and with modern touch? And one of those is actually the FUFA drum, which is an interprovince competition. The older folks, my father's years or even my grandfather's years, would remember that, as I was told by the rote of Chief Rote of Acholi. So yes, some of these things, and when it happened, that's how we got to get great names of great players like Pari Okech, Bunyenyezi from Ankole, and Beka Kasigwa in Bunyoro. And we think that by taking the game down to the grassroots, we'll be able to unearth the potential of young kids out there that can eventually become household names. And in that space, we have also been complemented again by our international affiliations. Like, for instance, 2 weeks ago, we had a delegation from, 3 weeks ago, we had a delegation from FIFA that was here to talk about football for schools. And in that project, FIFA has donated to us 60,000 balls, and they have fully paid even the taxes. You can imagine 60,000 balls to schools, and I'm not talking about secondary schools, I'm talking about primary schools. So again, this 100-year institution with its affiliations is going to benefit kids in this country by 60,000 balls. That is a huge, I don't remember any initiative by the Federation in my time or even before when we ever had an investment of that magnitude. But thanks to FIFA, which is our affiliation, that is happening. So that is one of the huge milestones. What is going to happen is, because if you look at football, for instance, football can thrive for as long as 3 or 4 aspects are available. One is a space where to play from. And in this country, we are still privileged that those spaces are available, especially in the countryside, although it is becoming a challenge in urbanized settings.
When you say those spaces are available, are you referring to the formal spaces that are available, that are recognized and reviewed by the Federation? Are you talking about the spaces that you have in form of land titles that are under the Federation that are meant to be converted into spaces for football?
Here I'm referring to every space available, irrespective of ownership, irrespective of development. Because you can't start up a kid in Nambole or in Nachivubo, or the kid must start kicking ball either in the compound or somewhere. So those spaces are available, especially in the countryside. In urbanized settings like our cities, Kampala and the other cities, it is becoming a problem. The second ingredient is equipment. There must be a ball to kick. You remember when we were growing up, we would make balls from fiber or even from rubber. So there must be, and equipment can be from basic to grandiose. Basic is anything round that you can kick. Grandiose is a proper rubber football, proper uniform, proper boots. But hey, how many kids can afford those things? So sometimes you do with the little basic that you have. And then the other one is competitions. Playing around, kicking around the ball, you can never know how good you are until you measure yourself against an opponent. And finally, the fourth one is financing. So for you to provide a safe space to play football, to provide equipment, to provide or to organize competitions, you must have some bit of financial resources to be able to do that. So international affiliations give us that, but also there are great local investors in the game, some known, some unknown, because the scope of the game is varied from basic to professional. So at every level, there are people that are putting in these resources. There are a lot of coaches that work with the kids, and they're not paid. It's just passion, And in every little town or in every little suburb or ghetto, there will be such a young man or such a man or such a woman who is working with the kids for no pay but just out of passion. And that is how the game is. But what we try to do as a federation is to try and have all these little efforts recognized. Like for instance, in our latest technical master plan that we have, we are looking at mainstreaming the aspect of scouts, football scouts, all over the country to tap into these young fellows. If you look in Europe, again, like you talked about our colonial masters, kids are being tapped at the young age of 3-4 years.
3-4 years.
I recently saw a kid, I can't remember the story, who was being signed at the age of 6 by a big club. If you look at the story of Messi, I think he came to La Masia at the age of 6 with his entire family. If you look at the story of Jude Bellingham, how the parents, the mother and the father, had to separate. The mother went with Jude Bellingham to Borussia Dortmund, and the father remained with the young brother who was also in a academy in the UK. So, and these stories are many. You just have to look for them, where an investment decision is done that we're going to support this kid from that very young age. For us here, we are still pushing to wake up our kids in the morning, to take them to pre-primary school, 5 o'clock, drop them to
pre-primary school, and the primary school that don't have space.
And they don't have space.
One of the things that you mentioned
so
about.
the others are going places, and no wonder their success is also high. But we have also made strides where the football game, the space is today, is not where it was, not even in the last 30 years. So we are making tremendous improvement, but we continue to aspire to do more.
Okay. In aspiring to do more, let's make reference to the partnership that you talked about earlier, that's going to be giving thousands of football balls to, especially focusing on primary schools.
Yes.
The primary schools that are mushrooming up today do not even have the mere space to allow and accommodate sports, because the education system right now is entirely focused on education, number of grades that will appear in the newspapers that will make the school more money. And for somewhat reason, those investors are eradicating sports right from that grassroots. And so how are you intending to merge the two? You're getting the investment of the equipment, but there's no space where that equipment is going to be enjoyed.
You're actually right, but also, let me start from here. In the past, and I still believe it still exists, for a school to be given a license to operate as a school, one of the basic requirements was always having a space for co-curricular activities like sports. Unfortunately, in this country, somebody said we have the best
laws, policies, regulations.
Our challenge is enforcement.
Yeah.
So we still continue to wake up in the morning and find a school in the neighborhood, in a former residential house, and there is a school. I think Ministry of Education and Sports, especially the inspection department, have their job cut out. But it is also important for us as a community, as a population, to continue reminding Ministry of Education and Sports of their core mandate of providing learning institutions with proper facilities for our kids to develop as a wholesome. Now, it is true that there was a time, and there are still people, investors in education, that don't look at development of a wholesome child. But we have also seen a lot of private schools, and this is mostly in secondary, where they are using sport as a way to promoting their schools, and those are investing a lot. If you look at schools like St. Mary's Chitende and their stadium, and their history is from supporting sport, Budo Secondary, and many more, they are investing into sport. Now it is also coming back into primary schools, and of course, as there is a competition that is organized by Ministry of Education and Sports, especially the physical education department. But also as FUFA, we've come up with, I think we have two competitions. There is one that we call Odilo, which is the primary schools competition. And then there is also one, I think, for senior one and senior twos. And we continue to see a lot of interest in these competitions. From the sports officers, from the head teachers, both private and public. There's hunger and there's a need. There is hunger. Yeah. There is hunger. Yeah. Another one is, you probably know of the FUFA TV Cup. The FUFA TV Cup is a traditional schools competition. And what FUFA did, identified a gap and tried to create a solution. What was the gap? Because secondary schools football has become very competitive. Like I said, especially the private schools that have found a reason to invest into football as a way of promoting their schools, they are doing lots of things that a typical traditional school would not do. Offering bursaries to kids, dedicating a lot of budget to sports. So what happened is that the traditional schools were being left out. They were not participating, or even if they did, they were being knocked out. And then that was depriving the young footballers in those schools. Even if it is one, he deserves a chance, So FUFA, what FUFA did was to come up with a FUFA TV Cup that was focusing on these traditional schools that were not competitive enough to compete with private schools in the post-primary schools competition. And you'd be amazed how it has taken up the country. The other day, President Magogo was doing a country tour, and I happened to escort him to Gulu, and we watched a fantastic game. I think it was Komboni versus Lango College, and then when Arua, we watched St. John Bosco from Koboko playing against Imvara. It was fantastic. You'd imagine schools football, it would only be students of the school, but even the communities. So initiatives like these that are going to take us to the countryside to reinvigorate the community, but also to look for that talent that was originally elusive, will continue to take us in the next phase of 100 years plus.
In the next phase of 100 years, let's make reference to the Ministry of Education and Sports. Now, in your comment, you said in the past it was a requirement that through inspection,
I think still is,
at the ministry level. I mean, the evidence is otherwise.
It still is, like I said.
the evidence between you and me, the schools that you drive past from your home to get to Serena here do not have the bare minimum of the easiest sports discipline that is adopted to which is football.
Even those that had, like Kololo Secondary School, I see hotels where the football pitches were.
Yeah, yes.
You know,
so
Nakasero here, I see apartments.
Yeah, it begs the question, as the leadership of the Federation, what engagements are you having at ministerial level to be able to speak into the reality of the fact that space is important in the job that you are doing? And if it's education and sports, how can you actually continue drumming those two alongside each other and not making them competitive over each other?
First of all, let me for the first time say this. The attempt to bid for AFCON was a deliberate strategy to have government on table to discuss, to mainstream the issue of sports funding in this country. And to that extent, I think we are overachieving. Because today, if you look at the key strategic projects for government, AFCON-related projects are key among the priority. AFCON alone will not solve the problems, but it will bring the fore of that discussion. For instance, since 1994, when Nambole Stadium was built, it is now that we are going to get two, I would say, world-class stadiums, one in Hoima and one in Akibwa.
Which world-class we also can't be sure it will be world-class, because the Nambole you speak of is not yet fully structured as it was on plan in 1998.
I will think it will be world-class because the competition that we want to host is world-class. That competition is not ours. It has to, whatever infrastructure we're doing, have to meet the standards of the competition owners with CAF. And that's why they keep doing regular inspections. I told you even today there is a team coming to do inspections. So to that extent, I think they will be world class. But the discussion I'm trying to say is that for the first time since 1994, when we built Nambole, which was, I believe, a donation from the Chinese government, this is the first time that government is actually investing. And from what I'm being told, the funding for Hoima and Akibwa is not going to be loan. It's going to be money generated locally by government. And over and above those two stadiums, there is going to be, I think, another 16 training facilities that are going to be put up in areas where the stadiums are. But as FUFA, we've also been pitching to government to ensure that even areas that will not host AFCON, there is a legacy project that has been done in that area to commemorate the time that we hosted the AFCON for the first time. So to that extent, and if that happens, we think our desire and intent of hosting and bidding for AFCON will have achieved us as a nation to have a discussion around sports infrastructure. But also, what is also important, and we must give credit to government, people might recall, before 2018, the budget for National Council for Sports was around about 490 million. 490 million for 53 sports disciplines. As we speak today, the budget is about 45 billion from 2018. That's not even 10 years. And FUFA, I must say, with other sports personalities, have been key in having that discussion and doing that advocacy to government to ensure that sport is catered for. And this is not out of you know, out of nowhere. If you look at the recent census that was done, 50% of this country is below the age of 35. That is youth. So yes, youth need jobs, but football or sports can create the jobs. And we must look at the people that think for this country at a more strategic level. They must look for sport as one of the best absorbents of unemployment. take an example of this Chan and AFCON when it comes. Imagine how many jobs are going to be created around construction of stadia, around you know, the guys that will guide this team, around hospitality, the hotels that will provide accommodation for these magnitudes of people coming, around you know, volunteers, around specialty services that are going to be offered. Imagine, you know, everybody now is glued at the Paris Olympics. Imagine the jobs that are being created in France or in Europe, for that matter, around the Olympics. So sport can be a very big absorber of unemployment, and governments must work with sports federation to see how can we use sports entities to help government in this key problem, because it is a major problem and it's growing. You know, it is only sport where you can have uneducated employed and educated employed. You can't come here to read news or to anchor a program if you've not gone to school and you speak fluent English. It is impossible, you know. So it is only sports that can help you, both the educated and the uneducated. So
it bridges the gap between the societal divide as far as social structures are concerned. And when you speak of employment, I think the other day I visited a sports facility on Moanda Road for badminton, and I really see the employment. The Getman is being employed, the chicken and meat people around the area being employed. You do have a bar that is functioning. You do have a young man who's putting shoes out there and attire, you know, sports attire, and they're making money off that. You do have someone who's managing the facility, and then the people who are using the facility by and large. So it's definitely a holistic structure to deal with an employment problem. Now,
it is a huge ecosystem. I come from Masindi. We have a team, Kitare FC, I don't know whether you've heard about it, that plays out of Masindi. Kitare FC is, we call it the pride of Bunyoro. When it's playing in Masindi, that day, everybody makes money. Everybody. And I mean everybody. For as long as you're into retail business, you make money. The petrol stations that dispense fuel to borders and traffic, the guys that own restaurants, the guys that own bars, the guys that own you know, lodging facilities, the guys that roast roadside meat, the guys that sell you know, clothes, you know, in shops, everybody makes money, and everybody's looking out for a match day when the team is playing. So imagine. And this is that's a conversation we're going to come back to, because it begs the question, in this day and era, whereas the other traditional clubs are losing so much viewership and expectation, what has Chitaras been doing in order to attract its locals to come and support their game in Masindi? We'll be returning with that conversation. We'll also be tilting towards the development of football as far as the women's side is concerned. What deliberate steps has the Federation be taking in that direction, and how they're building up to a better stance, so that it's a little bit of, you know, 50 and 50 in terms of space, in terms of equipment, in terms of competition, and at the end of the day also in terms of financing. But that discussion coming your way right after this break. Fun facts from the conversation that we are having this morning, looking at the Federation of Ugandan Football Associations over the course of 100 years. 1924 is when the federating did happen. It's been 100 years since then. Of course, many milestones have been mentioned, but there's some interesting things that have come out of these conversations that I'm having with EXCO member, that is Roger Byamukama. First of all, he says that the first federation president was the Kabaka of Uganda, and that is Chwa.
And then where they sit today as a federation, that is in Mengo, is where the first game was played of football. So these are interesting facts that are coming through at 100 years. He's also the man behind the committee that is being put together to actually celebrate 100 years. Later on, he'll be telling us how the committee is planning to celebrate this big achievement, a centennial achievement. But as we were having a conversation right into the break, we were referring to football and how back in the day it used to be for the community. The community would go out to engage and watch football. And of course, he was talking to us about the benefits of such entities and activities within society. But today, with the evolvement of technologies, you get to see that now people stay away from football and engage with it in a different manner. And I left him with a question of how is a community club like Chitara doing it in such a competitive time of technology as is today. Rogers.
I think it is a combination of many things. One, the region where Chitara Football Club comes from is not a region that has had a lot of, Premier League clubs, like say here in Kampala, Uganda. So there was a bit of fertile ground and hunger for top-notch football when the team qualified. First qualified during COVID, and it didn't stay long in the Premier League. It was relegated immediately. Then it came back. That's one. Two, the team is owned by the community. So the community have a sense of belonging that this is our team. Now, you can't compare that esteemed position like when a team is owned by an institution. Here everybody believes that we own the team, and the only contribution is paying the gate collections. One of the things that the management of Chitara, and I applaud the president, Mr. Deo Kasozi, and the team, is that when the game is played, within an hour or two, there is declaration of the gate collections. That is the first one in Uganda. Transparency. So somebody sees huge crowd in the stadium, you declare 20 million, they feel proud that they were part of that contribution. And they even told where the money is going to take care of the club expenses. The other one is that the club did a lot of strategic things intentionally in pre-season by going to play football friendly games almost in all towns of Bunyoro. Masindi, Chiriandongo, Kagadi, Kakumiro, Chigorovia, Sevigoro, down at the lake. It was intentional for them to go and have friendlies there. Sometimes they pick a player or two to come and join the team. So when the team is playing, that community will come to support
the member in
their own that they have seen at a high level. But also, I think the leadership of the club also plays a huge role. We've seen clubs where there are governance issues. I own the club, I own the club, I own the club, I own the club. Those are unheard of in Chitara. There is a solid team that the community has entrusted, and they understand that they're custodians, and that's why they're accountable, that's why they're transparent, and they are doing their best in the circumstances. And the team has, I would say, has achieved, and I congratulate the President Deo Kasozi and the team. Newly promoted in the league, Uganda Cup, Stanbic Uganda Cup champion, get an invitation to go play abroad in Ethiopia, win there, along becoming the Uganda Cup champion, beat big established teams, you know, it's no mean achievement.
All right.
And I wish them well in their Continental engagement against Benghazi in this August, and we continue to pray that they perform as well on the continent as they have performed on the local scene. All
right. Speaking of performance on continental levels, we've always been hit by the reality of how unprofessional, you know, football back home here is, and it's really well displayed in the fact that we are always hitting the bar, just group stages, and then we're packing back home. It begs the question, why is that the case continuously? And as FUFA moving into another century, what are some of the commitments that you're giving as a federation to ensure that that is no longer the case for football as far as Uganda is concerned?
What you're saying is true. Our clubs, when you compare with what were our peers in the recent latter years, and where those clubs are and where we are, there is a huge gap, even within the region here. Simba and Yanga were clubs that our Express, KCCA, Villa were matching in every aspect. Today, Simba and Yanga are something different. And that is without talking about teams, say in South Africa or in Egypt. I had the pleasure of visiting Ahali in Egypt, Ahali Sports Club. Ahali Sports Club has over 22 million fans or members. The fans are much more, but members fully subscribed. We went to their club, the history, the training facility, where they play from. And in that case, I think I was with the KCCA team. We had gone to play them. We played them in Alexandrian Champions League. That game ended 4-3. Ahali winning 4, but KCCA managed to score 3 goals. And then the following day, we asked to tour their facilities. Now, when you compare that with KCCA here, it's clearly we are miles apart.
Right. Yeah.
The stadium we played in Alexandria, I think, was about 80,000 seater, and they had filled it. When we went to their club, the people that were there, their training base, the clubhouse, the museum, and we were told actually you cannot now apply to be a member and get admitted there full. When they are doing their club elections, imagine campaigning to 22 million people. They use billboards like a presidential election. The bill, and for the time of elections, they use billboards across the country, and they have funds across the entire Middle East. So, as for what we are doing, one, we've been having a program called Club Pro Agenda, where we go to clubs and focus on 8 key areas in terms of capacity building. 2 is by organizing credible and legit competitions where these teams can participate, where there is no shortcut, but also continue engaging these clubs on our technical master plan, which is basically focuses on 3 pillars, which is governance, sport, and the business. Because for you to talk of the sport to be organized professionally and competitively, you need to have a very solid governance and ownership structure back home, because that is the anchor of everything. But also, you need now to focus, after that, you need to focus on the sport, because that is your core business. And focusing on the sport, you must be competitive, you must be winning, but you must also be able to build, to have a conveyor belt of the human resource, Now, once you have the team that's competitive, that is guaranteed by the conveyor belt, then you can use that as your selling point to focus on the business. How does this club be self-reliant? How does it grow from this stage to another? So that ecosystem of governance, sport, and business is a trinity that we continue engaging our clubs on. Some are making progress, some are lagging behind, but as a federation, it is our job to ensure that we use our ability as a think tank to help our clubs.
Okay, in that regard, let's talk about helping women in football and that end of it growing. Of course, when you look at the structures there, you talked about football right from primary competitions, secondary competitions, and so just up until recently that you're having the competitions considerate of women. When you look at the leagues, the participation of the clubs in there are really school-based clubs, and so you don't have a primary club that is just women above or out of the school structure or that kind of structure. And so it begs the question, why do we still have this as a lag behind for FUFA in terms of football development in women?
First of all, football, even globally, is a recent development. And when I say recent development, probably maybe not more than 30 years. Historians will tell you even a century is recent, but imagine not even more than 30 years. Here in Uganda, I think women football was brought to the fore by Mama Beka Kazibwe, again, may her soul rest in peace, I think in the early 90s. And then she had a few people that bought into her vision. People like Mzee Chris Kalibala, people like Paul Sally, and many others. And initially football for women was played like a gala, Independence Gala. And then it was anchored on schools. I remember in 2013, I think our under 20 girls in one of, I think it was an Olympic qualifier or one of those international qualifiers. We beat South Sudan 22-0 on aggregate. And the FUFA president at that time sat us down as executive and said, yes, the girls have done very well, but going to the next level, we are going to spend about 200 million. But then what next? Because we'll never go beyond that. So he says, my thinking is, let us remove this team from this competition and put in place a more sustainable structure that can guarantee growth of the game. I will tell you in the executive, it was a very heated debate. Many of us saying, no, we are going to demoralize the girls after winning 22-1. Let us spend that 200 million and the team goes, who knows, maybe we'll have luck and proceed. Now, he really labored to convince us, and he had his way, he convinced us. We withdrew the team, and then we created the first women league using those resources. So the first league, I think, was 2014, 2016, if I'm not mistaken. And to date, we have the FUFA Women's Super League, which is the top tier. We have the FUFA Elite League. We have the third division, which is like the regional league. And in terms of league structure, that's where the women football is. But what has that achieved for us as a country? Since then, we've been to CAF AUCONs. The AUCON is like the AFCON twice. We have won the COSAFA Cup as a guest team, and we have been on knocking on the door for continental qualification. Recently, our girls, the Olympic team, were beaten by Zambia, I think on aggregate 1-0, and Zambia is in Paris Olympics. So we are making progress.
Okay.
And that progress, you can imagine, from 2015, 2016 league, it's not even 10 years.
All right. I think I'll ask my producer to give us another time to just focus on women in football over the course of 100 years and what the future plans for the Federation are. But as we take the final band to this discussion, it's 100 years. And how is the Federation intending to celebrate? And we'd also want to hear about the General Assembly that is upcoming.
The General Assembly will happen I think on the 4th of October, somewhere in Wakiso district. The venue has not been yet identified, and that is also symbolic, considering that the crust of the game for the longer time has been around here in Central region. So we need to give back to the region and also to the founder of FUFA, Sekabaka Daudichwa. So it will be in Wakiso, in Buganda, and around that there will be a lot of other festivities ensconced around there for 100 years. And in due course, we'll be unveiling the real plan. But for you on air, I extend an invitation to be part of those festivities, given that the passion you have displayed here by having a lot of knowledge, and I'm surprised. So we look forward to seeing you in Wakiso as a special guest of the Federation. All
right, thank you so much for the invitation. Rogers Viamukama, EXCO member, and also he's the chairman behind the committee that is putting together a celebration, a compilation of FUFA at 100 years, and also giving us the future, next century, what its commitments are going to be. Hopefully we'll have a build-up on this conversation, but for now we put it to bed and say kudos to FUFA, kudos to the FUFA current president, and that is Engineer Moses Magogo, for you know, the ship that and how you're steering it. Of course, it's been quite evident, and your leadership, and to the other leaders that will come forth. There's a lot to be picked up from the past in order to enjoy the present, but also create a better future for football in Uganda, across the region, and of course internationally. I am Priscilla Regina Daloga, and my colleague Chris Igenye. We wish you a lovely day.